The number one reason to defer Social Security. It's not what you think. I'm just telling you right now, it's not what you think. Worked on this all morning long for my blog post. I sent it out to my email subscription list, put it up on my website, and now I'm going to do a video on it because I think it's actually quite important. So let's dive into this. This is on my website, and I'll put a link in the show notes. So you go to heritagewealthplanning.com, heritagewealthplanning.com. You'll see Peaks Island. I might change that background, actually. Tell me, what do you guys think? Should I change that background? I've had the same background for over 2 years now. I like this one better. Not better. I like that one too. That's us, and that's Milton High School in Georgia. I like that. It's 3 of my kids right there. It's Kevin, Chloe, and Liam. That's about 3-4 years ago. Anyway, what do you think? Should I change my background to that? Let me know in the comments. Say yay or nay. Yay or nay. This is where I was raised, right here, Peaks Island. Used to jump off this wharf. That was the right there was the car ferry right here, I should say. Actually, where they got the new wharf. It used to be on this other side. Man, we used to jump off there into the swells when the boat would back up. All right, so we go down here and we see this article right here. The number one reason to defer taking Social Security. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes. There are countless arguments to be made for when you should take Social Security. It's easy to prove if you should take it early. It's also easy to prove if you should delay until you reach 70. The problem with each of these points, of course, is that they are all premised on, and if this happens, then that will be the best strategy. For example, if you can get a greater than 5% a year return on your investments, you should take Social Security early. Or if you live until your 90s, you should take Social Security late at 70. But given these unknowns, it's an impossibility to prove anything in terms of when the best time is to file for Social Security will be. However, assuming you live to your normal life expectancy, around 85 years or so, the number one consideration in when to take Social Security is future investment returns. It really is. I say if you think you can get over 4 to 5%, and without everything else being equal, you would want to take it early so you can allow your investments to grow. It's just that simple. Again, if you think you get between over 4% essentially, and you're going to live to a normal life expectancy if you're 60 to 65 years old right now. There are other considerations. You know, my wife is 4 years younger than me. She sacrificed her career to raise the children, all those things, taxes and all that. But it really comes down to if you live a normal life expectancy, what your investment returns are going to be. But let's dive into this. I was born in 1970. The S&P 500 has averaged 11% a year since then. If I could average 11% a year on my investments, it would only make sense to take Social Security early. But maybe those 50 years were an anomaly. After all, the stock market has been around much longer than 1970. In fact, we can go back all the way to 1871. Since then, we have averaged 9.15% a year. That means your money doubled every 7.86 years over the course of 150 years. Not too shabby. Since the modern era of the U.S. stock market in 1926, the S&P 500 has averaged 10.13%. So you can see that historically, the U.S. stock market has given us returns that would make taking Social Security early a no-brainer. Even if you didn't need the income, you'd be better off having taken it early and investing it in order to maximize your total net worth. That is the argument I hear all the time, and it's a correct argument if you get historic investment returns. But what if you don't? We don't want to succumb to home country bias where you see things solely through the filter of the country you reside. There's a huge world out there, and just because the U.S. escaped the carnage the rest of the world has witnessed doesn't mean we will. Oh, and when I mean carnage, I'm not talking about war, pestilence, and socialism. I'm talking about good old-fashioned market declines. Let's look at Japan. You remember Japan, don't you? Everyone wanted to be like Japan in the 1980s. Check this article out. So let's click on this guy. Will it open up for me? Oops. View full page. Let's see if it'll open for us. Okay, it didn't do as open. I didn't make it as big as I was hoping. So let's go back. We'll just read it from there. Right. Martin Feldstein and Kathleen. I'm not familiar. It's his wife, but she's an economist too. I'm not all that familiar with her, but certainly familiar with Martin. He was a CEO, the economic advisory council on economic advisors for Reagan, actually. And he had written this back in 1988 from the Boston Globe, 1988, June 7th, 1988. Japan's economy continues to outshine all the other major industrial countries of the world. Although a sharp rise in the value of the yen during the past 3 years has caused a decline in its exports, an increase in its imports, Japan's GNP, gross national product, they used to say GNP, now we say GDP, gross domestic product, is expected to grow at a rate of about 4% this year, double the rate of growth in Europe and more than 1% higher than the U.S. growth rate. Remember when we used to get 3% a year growth, and that was we'd kill to get that now. The enviable performance, of course, is nothing new. The Japanese economy has had a much stronger average growth rate than the United States and Europe for 3 decades now. As Americans have observed this record and have felt growing competition from Japan in both domestic and foreign markets, there have been increasing efforts to find lessons for the U.S. and the Japanese experiments. The most significant lesson for the Americans is the importance of a high rate of savings and investment in plant and equipment. A higher rate of investment means a more rapid increase in the amount of new equipment per worker, and more equipment means higher productivity. The key to Japan's economic success is the high rates of productivity, not the long-hour work week. It is true that Japanese do work more hours per year than their American and European counterparts, but this cannot be the source of Japan's faster rate of growth. Only if the number of hours worked increased from year over year could the rising GNP be attributed to that factor. In fact, the average hours worked by the typical Japanese have been declining in recent years, but the productivity of each hour work continues to grow rapidly. The lesson from that high savings begets high growth is demonstrated repeatedly in country after country. Countries that save and invest more have higher increases in productivity and real incomes. Thus, Korea, with a savings rate even higher than Japan's, enjoys even faster economic growth. The United States has had a poor record of savings and investment for several decades. For the past quarter century, net saving and investment in the U.S. has averaged only about 7% of GNP, a startling contrast to average Japanese ratios of 20%. By devoting this high share of GNP to capital accumulation, the Japanese have achieved their fast rate of economic growth. There is no simple explanation for the low rate of savings in the United States. While cultural differences undoubtedly play a role, the different incentives provided by the governments of the two countries are also important. Japan has low tax on savings, with substantial scope for tax-free savings like our IRAs, but on a much larger scale. Japan has no tax on capital gains realized on stocks, and much saving is through insurance companies that issue special savings policies that receive many favorable tax treatment. Of course, a high rate of savings and investment is not enough to assure rapid growth. Japan managers have been able to take the long view necessary to develop new products and new markets because the abundance of savings has kept Japanese interest rates low. Japan has also demonstrated an ability to adjust to rapid changes in economic conditions. A year ago, the Japanese economy seemed to falter under the sharp rise in the yen. It was threatening their exports and causing a substantial rise in imports from abroad. But within months, Japanese managers, recognizing the need to rely on less exports, has shifted to production for the domestic market and restored its economic growth. And today, unemployment in 1988 was less than 3%. Japan's high rate of economic growth should be seen as a challenge and not as a threat. Policymakers who are concerned about America's competitiveness and economic growth should focus on increasing national savings and maintaining labor market flexibility. All right. The above was written by none other than Martin Feldstein, who was going to be named the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board by George W. Bush in 2006, I think. Until AIG, for which he sat on the board, and he was part of AIG since 1988, got destroyed in 2007. So Bush was not going to put him on as the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board with his stain of AIG. Yet Feldstein in 1988 stated there have been increasing efforts to find lessons for the U.S. and the Japanese experiment. He of course had no clue what would begin to transpire in Japan in literally 1 year's time, which, if there were any accountability, would have reduced his stature among economists. But economists exist for one reason. Economists exist for one reason: to make astrologers look good. 30 years after Feldstein's completely incorrect article, we in the U.S. can indeed learn from the Japanese experiment, and here's how. Here's the Nikkei. 1990 down 38, 1991, 1992, you can see all that right there. That's some ugly stuff going back to 2020. So over the course of 30 years, not including 2020, which was down so far, if you invested in the Nikkei in 1990, you've averaged all of 0.96% a year, less than 1% annually. From 1990 through 2003, you averaged negative 9.03% annually. That's a negative 9.03. A $100,000 investment in 1990 would be worth all of $22,000 by the end of 2002, and that's without withdrawing any money at all. If you were to have the misfortune of taking 5% a year out of your portfolio starting in 1990 and adjusting for inflation, you have run out of money before the decade was even up. Here's stocks. We're not having a barbell, no cash there. You can see, started in 1990, we ran out of money in 1998. Crazy. Now, if you follow me at all, you know I'm a huge proponent of the barbell retirement plan. You can read about my most recent book, Retire with the Wellington Fund. I'm working on a forthcoming book dedicated solely to the barbell retirement plan. Sadly, though, even the barbell didn't save you from the carnage that was Japan in the 1990s. You ran out of money near 12 of your retirement. Not good. And here's the barbell right here. This is the cash we're taking out. This is the stock. So we take out cash whenever the market goes down. We take out stocks whenever the market goes up. And you can see we ran out of money in year 11. I guess year 12, actually. So stocks, cash. We ran out of cash, stocks, and we're done. So while many people will be convinced that what happened in Japan cannot happen here, I simply ask, why not? What makes you think Japan is not our future? Past performance of the U.S. markets? Well, hell's bells. From 1950 through 1989, the Nikkei averaged 18.69% annually. That means an investor doubled his money every 3.85 years. Oh, by the way, that's over 4 decades of time too, post-World War II. No one, and I literally mean no one, was saying in 1989 that Japan was doomed, as we just read from Martin Feldstein, who was a bigwig economist with Reagan. As I showed you in the article above, the highly acclaimed economist Martin Feldstein was singing the praises of Japan in the late 1988. And if you want to sleuth more, you can find economist after economist doing the same. I absolutely despise the idea that it can't happen here. It can't until it does. And if it does, you know what will save you? Social Security. And trust me, you'll be very glad you deferred taking Social Security due to the fact you'll get 75% more in tax favorable benefits by taking it at 70 than you did if you took it at 62. Oh, I hear you. The peanut gallery. Oh, so Josh, you think Social Security will still be around if the markets crash like happened in Japan? Yeah. Yes, I do. If Social Security goes, the country goes full revolt. No two ways around it. Full revolt is not what the ruling classes desire, and as such, they'll do whatever they can to keep the bread and circuses and business to occupy our time. And that means making sure we have enough money to get by, barely, but it'll be just enough to keep the masses entertained. So, while that may seem far-fetched, do you really want to risk it? You always need to go into retirement with the idea of, what if I'm wrong? And if so, what do I do if I'm wrong? Think about it long and hard before you make a decision based on what seems a historical norm, the U.S. stock market, that actually may be proved to be a historical oddity. That's a great article by myself, if I may say so myself. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I always say, what if I'm wrong? And as some guy had posted on a comment about Warren Buffett saying, that's fine. This is the best time to be in the world. I get it. That's good. I actually agree. I have no bonds. All stocks. But just because Warren Buffett says it doesn't mean it's true. No one knows what the future holds, man. What was Warren Buffett saying about Japan in 1988? I don't know. We could look it up. I'm sure. Maybe one of these days I will, but I just don't feel like it now. We're already 14 minutes into the video. Where I'm going with this is, at the end of the day, man, if you're wrong and you go to Japan-like economy, this is after everyone's singing Japan praise. If you wonder, I'm itching. I scratched myself something wicked. And I'm itching it right there. It itches. If you're wondering, so anyway, if we go to Japan-like economy, and I'm not saying we are, I have no clue. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you better be prepared, because it works until it doesn't. It can't happen here until it does. I'd love to hear your comments on that. And again, I'll put the links in the show notes so you can see this article yourself. All right, we'll see you guys.